Ladies and gentlemen, this is RedGamingTech.com video. We're going to be doing a tech roundup because there's loads of little bits of news which I figure are going to be great in a gigantic ball of, I don't know, something. I was going somewhere with that and then it just trailed off and I was like, nope, I've got absolutely nothing. Anyway, let's start, shall we? So, first of all, Zen launched. Now this I would like you to take with a massive truckload of salt. But supposedly sources at WCCF Tech are stating that Zen is going to be released in the fourth quarter of 2016. They are stating it's going to be for holiday season. On the other hand, APUs, which are based on the Zen architecture, are going to hit some point in 2017. I would like to point out that this is obviously a massive grain of salt. Personally, I've heard other rumours concerning the second half, and that's not something that sources have told me directly, but just the kind of industry rumours have been circulating for some time, and AMD have made, I guess you could say, hints towards that's going to be when it's released, but obviously it's a bit difficult to know at this point. I'm not going to go into Zen's architecture at this point because I'm pretty sure we all know how it's going to handle and the performance levels. Supposedly, just for a very quick overview, it's going to offer about 40% improvements clock for clock in comparison to AMD's current architecture, and it's going to be a lot more Intel-like in its ways of doing things. So for the sake of argument, it's effectively going to have hyper-threading, and it's just going to rock. And obviously the rumours dictate that it'll have up to 8 cores, which is pretty damn awesome, meaning a ridiculous number of threads. On the subject of rumours, Nvidia. Now, Nvidia at the moment are in a bit of a weird situation because the GTX 960 and then you've got the 970, it's fair to say that there's a bit of a gap in the lineup. AMD are basically trouncing them in this lineup. It's not to say that the 960 is bad, but the gap between it and the 970 is quite large. There's a gulf there. And honestly, now that the 960... they've pretty much done away with the 2GB model, and they're going to be moving to 4, but even so, in terms of raw horsepower, that would be the, for example, number stream processors, and naturally, the actual raw bandwidth offered on the card is not quite there. So it's good for 1080p, but you could see it start struggling. The 960 has 1024 CUDA cores, whereas the GTX 970 has 1664. That's quite a difference, I'm pretty sure you'll agree. But why am I mentioning in this? Well, there have been a lot of rumours and insights that's dictated that the GTX 960 Ti will eventually come out, and this looks accurate because benchlife.info are reporting that this is actually going to happen. So there is actually an OEM version of the GTX 960, which it looks like Nvidia, if once again the reports are accurate, all they're going to do is just say, hey, you know what, we're going to take the OEM version and just release it to retail. Once again, supposedly. What's the difference? Primarily bus width and CUDA cores. CUDA cores get a roughly 20% boost, so it's going to go from 1024 to 1280. Core base clock and core clock are unknown. What we understand about the OEM version, it's going to run at 924 for the base, but what it boosts to, we don't know. However, let's be honest, in the retail version, it's probably going to be higher than that because the likes of MSI, ASUS, and whomever else are going to want to say, yeah, we don't want it to run at a slower base clock, because ultimately a lot of gamers, particularly those who don't know that much about technology, I'm not necessarily saying you, they look purely at the clock speed. They don't, all they see is GTX 960 running at, just for the sake of argument, 900 megahertz, or sorry, GTX 960 Ti running at 900 megahertz, GTX 960 standard running at 1100 megahertz. It's not difficult to know that they're going to go for the non-Ti. Hopefully that made sense. I'm so tired, my brain's probably got that completely and utterly wrong, but it's fine, you get what I mean. So in this case, I feel that they probably will clock the Tis a little bit higher. The other difference naturally will be the bus width. It's going to go up to, well, probably at least 192 bits. The OEM version is running at 3GB GDDR5, so it's a bit difficult to know what's going to happen. in regards to the actual type, because it's probably going to have 4 gigabytes of GDDR5. On the other hand, they might not. They may stick to 3 gigabytes. I'm just pulling that out my butt. Pascal, as you probably will be aware, is not going to be arriving until at least the second quarter of next year. I'm sure that Nvidia would love to say differently. I'm sure they would love to get it out sooner, but graphics cards don't come out just because you want them to. Trust me, if they did, a lot of graphics cards would be coming out under my watch. So primarily, obviously, bandwidth is going to increase quite considerably, which will alleviate some of the problems of the GTX 960 lineup, despite the fact that, yes, it does have pretty good color compression technology, which does reduce some of the strain on the memory architecture. The bottom line is, from our own testing of the card, it is a really nice card, particularly for, let's say, low power systems, that type of thing. You can tell its memory bandwidth strained just from increasing the clock speeds, particularly at higher levels of anti-aliasing or higher let's say resolutions, that type of thing, the general stuff that makes games work. While I'm not going to read out all of the price cuts, AMD are being super duper, oh my god, we're going to be AMD to the prices, aggressive when it comes to, well, the prices. Essentially, they've cut all of their lineup. Obviously the R9, the Fury X, the Fury, the Nano, and also the other cards. For example, the R9 390 has received a fairly large price cut. The Nano, for sake of argument, comes down from 650, these are US dollars, all the way to 569. That's a lot of dollars. The Fury, 549, down to just $500. You can't really argue with that. That's a lot of performance. And even cards such as the R9 390, which we've also reviewed, hint, 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 go check out the review, hint, 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 nudge, 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 goes all the way down to around the 279 to 359 price range. Obviously, it does depend on the manufacturer, there we go, and other bits and bobs, but you can also get some rebates with that, obviously depending on, you know, the gods, but that's still an insane price range. I mean, come on now, that's a lot of heart, that's a lot of performance. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of card, that's a lot of raw performance considering the prices. I would argue, and this is my personal opinion, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but my personal opinion remains the same. I don't think at this point, unless you really need the cards, like you've just bought, just for the sake of argument, a 4K screen, I would suggest you don't buy anything like a £600 graphics card now. I just don't think it's worth it. I would suggest limping along with what you've got. If you've got something like, for the sake of argument, a 290, and you say to yourself, you know what, gee, I need more performance, go on eBay or buy a R9 390 and you know, run them in Crossfire if you really need it. The reason I mention that is just because the next generation graphics cards are undoubtedly going to be rather expensive, and next year it's going to be the era of expense, the era of just having your bank bleed because of, you know, Zen and Intel's next generation of CPUs, and if you're running DDR3, of course, you're going to have to buy DDR4 memory and so on. Obviously, if you're rich, don't listen to me, just run out and buy the card, but if you are trying to pinch those pennies, then it's not really worth it. And to be honest with you, I would argue something along the lines of an R9 380, 380X, GTX 970, maybe 390. You probably don't need much more for, let's say, 1080p. Unless you're, once again, doing a lot of downsampling or maybe running a FreeSync monitor, that type of thing. Okay, I think that's about everything I wanted to squeeze into this video. As you can probably tell, I'm a bit hyper because of ridiculous amounts of coffee, copious amounts of coffee, which are required after a long day of work, because otherwise I would be pretty much recording the video for about 2 minutes and then the rest would just be silence as I just kind of maybe make the odd snoozing sound. But hopefully you've enjoyed it anyway, and I'll see you soon. Take care, and let the coffee hype compel thee. Bye for now.